I'm not married. I don't have an apartment. I have no home. It's very disturbing to me.
During the early 1970s, television audiences across America fell in love with a young actress whose calm smile and natural beauty made her one of the most recognizable faces of the decade. That young actress was Susan Dey. She became famous for playing Laurie Partridge in the hit television series The Partridge Family. At the time, millions of teenagers watched the show every week, and Susan quickly became a symbol of youthful innocence and charm. Fans admired her gentle personality and her simple, girl-next-door look. However, behind the cheerful image that viewers saw on television, Susan's life was not always easy. Her journey to fame began with deep personal loss and emotional struggles that shaped the person she would later become. Susan Dey was born on December 10, 1952, in Illinois, United States. She grew up in a middle-class family where her father worked as a newspaper editor and her mother was a nurse. Her childhood began in a fairly normal way. Like many children, she spent her early years playing, going to school, and enjoying family life. But when Susan was only 8 years old, something happened that changed her life forever. Her mother suddenly passed away. The loss deeply affected young Susan. Losing a parent at such a young age left her feeling lonely and confused. Instead of openly expressing her sadness, Susan became quiet and reserved. Friends and family later said that she learned to keep her emotions inside, a habit that would stay with her for many years. After the death of her mother, Susan's father moved the family to New York. Life slowly began to change there. Her father later remarried, and Susan gained a stepmother named Gail. Gail played an important role in Susan's future. She noticed Susan's natural beauty and believed that the shy young girl might succeed in modeling. At first, Susan did not think much about the idea. She was not confident and never imagined that she could become famous. But Gail encouraged her and began sending her photos to modeling agencies. Soon, Susan started receiving small modeling jobs. By the age of 15, she was appearing in magazines and advertisements. These early experiences helped her gain confidence and open the door to a world she had never expected to enter. Modeling became the first step toward a much bigger opportunity. One of Susan's photos eventually caught the attention of a television producer who was working on a new family sitcom. The show was about a musical family traveling together and performing songs while raising their children. Producers were searching for someone to play Laurie Partridge, the oldest daughter in the family. Even though Susan had no acting experience, her natural look and quiet charm impressed the casting team. After several auditions, she was chosen for the role. Suddenly, the shy teenager who had once doubted herself was about to become a television star. When The Partridge Family premiered in 1970, it quickly became a huge success. The show mixed comedy, music, and family stories in a way that audiences loved. Susan's character, Laurie Partridge, was smart, calm, and kind. Viewers connected with her immediately. Teenagers across the country placed her posters on their bedroom walls, and magazines frequently featured her on their covers. For Susan, the sudden fame was both exciting and overwhelming. She had entered the entertainment world almost by accident, and now millions of people knew her name. Although she smiled confidently on camera, the fast rise to stardom created new pressures that she had never faced before. Behind the scenes, Susan was still a very young woman trying to understand the complicated world of fame. The entertainment industry expected her to maintain a perfect appearance at all times. Television producers wanted her to stay extremely thin because they believed that was what audiences preferred. As a result, Susan began to worry about her weight and appearance. She started following very strict diets, sometimes eating only small amounts of food during the day. At one point, her weight dropped to dangerously low levels. While fans saw a beautiful and confident actress on television, Susan was quietly struggling with pressure and insecurity. Despite these challenges, Susan continued working hard on the show. She learned how to act, sing, and perform in front of the camera, even though she had never planned to become an actress. Each episode of the series brought new fans and greater success. Yet deep inside, Susan sometimes felt uncertain about who she really was beyond the character of Laurie Partridge. The fame that had arrived so suddenly would shape the rest of her life in ways she could not yet imagine. As the popularity of the Partridge Family continued to grow during the early 1970s, the life of Susan Dey changed in ways she had never expected. What started as a simple acting opportunity quickly turned into a national phenomenon. The show was watched by millions of families every week, and the cast members became household names. For teenage viewers especially, Susan became one of the most admired young stars on television. Her character, Laurie Partridge, was intelligent, calm, and kind, qualities that made her easy to relate to. Young fans wrote thousands of letters to the studio, and magazines regularly featured Susan on their covers. Posters of her appeared in bedrooms across the country, and her image was printed on school supplies, notebooks, and fan merchandise. In only a short time, the shy girl who had once doubted herself had become one of the most recognized faces in American entertainment. However, the excitement of fame also brought new pressures. Susan was still very young, and the sudden attention was overwhelming. The television industry expected her to maintain a perfect image at all times. Producers, photographers, and publicists wanted her to look flawless in every appearance. This constant pressure began to affect how she viewed herself. Like many young performers in Hollywood during that era, Susan felt that she had to meet strict beauty standards. She became extremely concerned about staying thin, and this concern slowly developed into a dangerous eating disorder. At times, she limited her diet to only a few small foods such as carrots and celery. Her weight dropped dramatically, and she later admitted that she had become seriously underweight. On television, viewers continued to see the same smiling, cheerful girl. But behind the scenes, Susan was struggling with anxiety and insecurity about her appearance. Despite these personal challenges, Susan worked hard to improve her acting skills. When she first joined the show, she had almost no experience in front of the camera. Acting was something she had to learn quickly while the series was already filming. Over time, she became more confident and comfortable with the process of performing. She also learned musical skills, since the show featured songs performed by the fictional Partridge Family band. The cast recorded music that became popular with fans, and the series itself became one of the defining television programs of the early 1970s. Although the spotlight brought pressure, it also gave Susan valuable experience that would later help her develop a serious acting career. During the height of the show's success, Susan began exploring opportunities outside the series. In 1972, she appeared in the action film Skyjacked alongside the legendary actor Charlton Heston. The movie told the story of a dramatic airplane hijacking and gave Susan the chance to appear in a more mature and serious environment than the cheerful television sitcom that had made her famous. Although her role in the film was not the main focus of the story, it helped introduce her to a wider audience and showed filmmakers that she might have potential beyond her teenage television image. For Susan, the experience was both exciting and intimidating. Only a few years earlier, she had been a high school student with no acting experience at all, and now she was sharing the screen with one of Hollywood's most respected stars. Around the same time, Susan also published a book aimed at teenage readers. The book offered simple advice about beauty, confidence, and growing up. Because of her popularity among young viewers, many fans looked to her as a role model. The book quickly gained attention, and it showed how powerful her influence had become during the early years of her fame. Yet Susan herself often felt unsure about the role model image that people expected her to represent. She was still learning about life and dealing with her own struggles, and the responsibility of being admired by millions of teenagers sometimes felt overwhelming. By the mid-1970s, the enormous success of the Partridge Family began to slow down. Television trends were changing, and after 4 seasons the series came to an end in 1974. For fans, it was the closing chapter of a beloved show that had defined a moment in pop culture. For Susan, however, the end of the series created a new challenge. She had spent several years playing Laurie Partridge, and audiences strongly associated her with that character. Many actors who become famous as teenagers struggle to move beyond their first successful role, and Susan soon discovered that she faced the same problem. Casting directors still saw her as the sweet teenage girl from the sitcom, even though she was growing into an adult actress who wanted to explore more serious roles. As the show ended and the spotlight slowly shifted away, Susan found herself asking an important question: Who was she beyond the image that television had created? The next stage of her life would involve trying to answer that question while rebuilding her career in a much more competitive and demanding Hollywood environment. After the end of the Partridge Family in 1974, Susan Dey entered one of the most difficult periods of her career. Many actors who become famous as teenagers struggle when their original shows end, and Susan quickly realized that she faced the same problem. For years, audiences had seen her as Laurie Partridge, the calm and kind teenage daughter in a cheerful musical family. That image was deeply fixed in the public's mind. Even though Susan was growing older and wanted to take on more serious roles, many casting directors still viewed her as the same teenage girl from the sitcom. This problem is often called typecasting, and it can make it very difficult for actors to move forward in their careers. Susan knew that if she wanted to continue working in Hollywood, she would need to prove that she could do much more than play the sweet character that had made her famous. She began accepting a variety of television and film roles that were very different from her past work. Some of these projects were small and did not receive much attention, but they gave her valuable experience and allowed her to develop her acting skills further. During this time, Susan worked hard to transform her public image. She wanted audiences and producers to see her not as a former teen idol but as a serious actress capable of handling complex characters. One of the projects that helped demonstrate her ability as a dramatic performer was the television film Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night. In this movie, Susan played a troubled young woman experiencing emotional and psychological struggles after the birth of her child. The role was far removed from the cheerful world of the Partridge Family. Instead of portraying a happy teenager, Susan had to explore darker and more complicated emotions. Critics noticed the difference and praised her performance. Many viewers were surprised to see how effectively she handled such a serious role. Although the film was not a huge commercial hit, it helped Susan gain respect within the television industry. Despite these positive steps, success did not come easily. Susan also appeared in the romantic television series Love Me, Love Me Not, hoping that it might become another popular program. Unfortunately, the series struggled with low ratings and was canceled after only a few episodes. For Susan, this was a disappointing setback. After experiencing enormous success with her earlier show, it was difficult to face a project that ended so quickly. However, she did not allow the disappointment to stop her from continuing to pursue new opportunities. Like many actors rebuilding their careers, she learned that progress in Hollywood often happens slowly and requires patience. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, Susan continued appearing in a number of television productions and films. These roles helped her slowly move away from the image that had once limited her. Each new project gave her the chance to show audiences that she was capable of portraying more mature characters. At the same time, she was also growing as a person. The experiences of her early fame, combined with the struggles she faced afterward, had taught her resilience and determination. Eventually, all of this hard work led to a major turning point in her career. In 1986, Susan received an opportunity that would completely transform her reputation in the entertainment industry. She was cast in the legal drama series LA Law, one of the most ambitious and successful television shows of the decade. In the series, Susan played Grace Van Owen, a smart and determined attorney who later becomes a judge. The character was confident, intelligent, and strong, very different from the gentle teenage girl she had once portrayed. This role allowed Susan to show the full range of her acting ability. Grace Van Owen was a complex character who had to deal with serious legal cases, moral dilemmas, and personal challenges. Susan's performance impressed both viewers and critics. Week after week, millions of people watched the show, and her character quickly became one of its most respected figures. In 1988, Susan received a Golden Globe Award for her performance, along with several nominations for the Emmy Awards. The recognition proved that she had successfully reinvented herself as a serious dramatic actress. For Susan, the success of LA Law represented something very important. After years of being known mainly as a teenage television star, she had finally earned respect for her talent and dedication. The young girl who once struggled with insecurity and pressure had grown into a confident performer capable of carrying powerful dramatic roles. Yet while her professional life was reaching new heights, her personal life was about to face challenges that would test her strength in very different ways. While the professional life of Susan Dey was improving during the 1980s thanks to her powerful role in LA law, her personal life was often far more complicated and emotional. Like many people who become famous at a very young age, Susan struggled to balance her career with her private relationships. Fame brought admiration and success, but it also created loneliness and pressure. Behind the strong and intelligent character she played on television, Susan was still a person searching for love, stability, and a sense of belonging. One of the most talked about chapters of Susan's personal life involved her relationship with her former co-star David Cassidy. The two first met when they were cast together on the Partridge Family. On the show, they played brother and sister, performing music together and appearing as part of the cheerful television family that audiences loved. However, behind the scenes, Susan developed real feelings for David. At the time, both of them were very young and suddenly famous. David Cassidy had become one of the biggest teen idols in the world, attracting enormous attention from fans everywhere he went. His concerts were filled with screaming admirers, and his face appeared on magazines across the globe. For Susan, working so closely with David created a deep emotional attachment. She admired his talent, his energy, and the confidence he showed while performing. Over time, her admiration slowly turned into romantic feelings. However, David did not initially see her in the same way. He often viewed Susan more like a younger sister or a close friend. Because of this, Susan kept many of her feelings private and rarely spoke openly about them. Watching David receive constant attention from fans and hearing about his other relationships was painful for her, but she tried to hide her disappointment. Eventually, near the end of the series, the situation changed. After years of friendship, David invited Susan to dinner. For Susan, this felt like the moment she had secretly hoped for. She believed that the relationship she had dreamed about might finally become real. The evening brought them closer, and for a short time it seemed that her feelings might finally be returned. But the situation did not develop into the lasting romance she had imagined. David later realized that he did not feel the same deep connection that Susan hoped for. For him, the relationship was brief and complicated by the intense attention surrounding his career. Years later, the situation became even more painful for Susan. In 1994, David Cassidy published his autobiography, where he described that evening and their brief relationship in detail. When Susan learned that such a private moment had been discussed publicly, she felt deeply hurt and betrayed. What she had considered a personal and meaningful experience had suddenly become public gossip. From that moment on, Susan chose to distance herself completely from David Cassidy. She rarely spoke about him again and avoided discussing the situation in interviews. Even when David later apologized, the emotional damage had already been done. While this chapter of her life was painful, Susan eventually found stability in other relationships. During the 1970s, she became involved with television writer and producer Dale McCraven. Their relationship was calmer and more supportive than her earlier romantic experiences. McCraven understood the pressures of the entertainment industry and treated Susan with kindness and respect. For a time, their relationship gave Susan a sense of safety and emotional support. However, as her career continued to grow and their lives moved in different directions, the relationship eventually came to an end. Unlike the painful situation with David Cassidy, their separation happened quietly and without public drama. Not long afterward, Susan entered a new chapter in her life when she met Hollywood talent agent Leonard Hershen. Hershen was older and highly experienced in the entertainment industry. Their relationship developed quickly, and the two were married in 1976. For Susan, the marriage represented a chance to build a stable family life after years of emotional uncertainty. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter named Sarah, bringing Susan great happiness. Becoming a mother was one of the most meaningful moments of her life. However, even this marriage faced challenges. The demands of Susan's career and the pressures of life in Hollywood slowly created distance between them. The couple had a significant age difference, and over time they began to want different things from life. While Herschel hoped for a quieter lifestyle, Susan was still determined to continue developing her acting career and proving herself in the industry. Eventually, the differences between them became too great, and their marriage ended in divorce in 1981. Although the separation was difficult, Susan remained focused on raising her daughter and continuing her professional work. The experiences she had gone through, heartbreak, public attention, and the challenges of balancing career and family had made her stronger and more independent. Yet despite her success and resilience, Susan still longed for a relationship that could bring lasting peace and stability to her life. After the difficult end of her first marriage, the life of Susan Dey slowly began to move toward a more peaceful direction. The early years of her career had been filled with emotional challenges, public attention, and personal disappointments. Yet those experiences also helped her grow stronger and wiser. By the mid-1980s, while her career was reaching new heights thanks to her success in LA law, Susan was also beginning to search for stability and balance in her private life. After years of being surrounded by the noise of fame, she wanted something much simpler and more meaningful, a relationship built on trust, patience, and understanding. During this period, Susan met television producer Bernard Safransky. Unlike many of the people she had previously encountered in Hollywood, Bernard was not interested in the glamour of celebrity life. He was already a respected figure in television production and had worked on several successful projects, but he preferred to stay behind the camera rather than seek public attention. When Susan and Bernard met, their connection grew naturally and quietly. There were no dramatic headlines or intense public interest surrounding their relationship. Instead, they simply enjoyed spending time together and getting to know each other away from the pressure of Hollywood. One of the things that impressed Susan most about Bernard was the way he treated her daughter, Sarah. As a single mother, Susan was always careful about the people she allowed into her family life. Bernard showed genuine care and kindness towards Sarah, and this helped Susan feel that she had finally found someone who understood the responsibilities and priorities that mattered most to her. Their relationship developed steadily, built on respect and patience rather than the intense emotions that had defined some of her earlier romances. In 1988, Susan and Bernard decided to marry. The ceremony was quiet and private, reflecting Susan's growing desire to live a life away from constant public attention. By this time, she had already experienced both the excitement and the difficulties of fame, and she no longer felt the need to prove herself to the world through publicity or headlines. Instead, she focused on creating a stable and supportive home for her family. Bernard shared this desire for a quieter life, and together they built a relationship based on mutual understanding. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, Susan continued to work in television and film while maintaining a strong commitment to her family. Her role in LA law remained one of the most important achievements of her career. The character of Grace Van Owen became widely respected for portraying a strong and intelligent woman in the legal profession. At a time when many television dramas still focused mainly on male characters, Grace stood out as a powerful female figure who handled serious legal cases and moral dilemmas. Susan's performance helped change how women were portrayed on television, and many viewers admired her for bringing depth and strength to the role. In addition to her acting career, Susan also became involved in charitable work. She supported organizations that help survivors of sexual assault, including the UCLA Rape Treatment Center. Her involvement with the organization showed another side of her personality, one that cared deeply about helping others and using her influence to support important causes. Even though she was a well-known actress, Susan preferred to keep her charitable work quiet and focused on making a real difference rather than seeking recognition. As the years passed, Susan gradually began stepping away from the entertainment industry. Unlike many celebrities who try to remain constantly in the spotlight, she chose a different path. After decades of working in television and film, she decided that her personal happiness and family life were more important than continuing to pursue fame. By the early 2000s, her acting appearances had become less frequent. One of her final roles came in the television drama Third Watch, after which she quietly stepped away from regular acting work. Susan's decision